Prayer is often described as the lifeline of a believer, a direct connection to the Creator of the universe. Yet, let's be honest, there are times when prayer feels like a struggle. Maybe you're tired, distracted, overwhelmed, or even spiritually distant. But what if I told you that those are the moments when prayer becomes even more essential? Today, we'll dive into why it's so important to push through and force yourself to pray, even when you don't feel like it. By the end of this message, you'll understand the power of persistent prayer and how it can transform your relationship with God, especially during spiritual dry seasons. Let's begin with a simple but profound truth. Our emotions are unreliable. Jeremiah 17:9 reminds us that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? If we only prayed when we felt like it, our prayer lives would be inconsistent at best and non-existent at worst. Emotions are temporary and can be influenced by circumstances, stress, or even something as simple as how much sleep we got the night before. But prayer is not based on how we feel. It's based on obedience to God and trust in His promises. In 1 Thessalonians 5:17, Paul commands us to pray without ceasing. This doesn't mean we're expected to be on our knees 24/7, but it does mean cultivating a habit of prayer that isn't dictated by our moods. Think of it this way: you don't skip meals just because you're not particularly hungry. In the same way, your soul needs the nourishment of prayer, whether or not you feel like engaging in it. Now let's address the spiritual dry seasons, those times when God feels distant and prayer seems like a chore. These moments are common in the Christian walk and are even experienced by spiritual giants in the Bible. Take David, for example. In Psalm 13, he cries out, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" David felt abandoned, yet he still prayed. His example shows us that prayer isn't just for the good times, it's for the valleys too. Forcing yourself to pray during these dry seasons is an act of faith. It says, "God, I trust you even when I don't feel you. I believe in your presence even when you seem silent." Hebrews 11:6 tells us that without faith, it is impossible to please God. When you push through your feelings and choose to pray, you are exercising faith, which pleases the Lord and strengthens your spiritual foundation. Another reason to force prayer is that it aligns your will with God's. Jesus himself modeled this in the Garden of Gethsemane. Facing unimaginable agony, he prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. If Jesus, the Son of God, had to wrestle in prayer to align himself with the Father's will, how much more do we? Prayer isn't about convincing God to do what we want. It's about transforming our hearts to desire what He wants. When you force yourself to pray, you're allowing God to shape your will, even when your emotions resist. Prayer is also a spiritual weapon. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and spiritual forces of evil. The enemy knows the power of prayer and will do everything he can to discourage you from engaging in it. He'll use distractions, doubts, and even your own feelings to keep you from the throne of grace. But James 4:7 gives us this promise: "Submit yourselves to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Forcing yourself to pray is an act of resistance against the enemy and a declaration of your reliance on God. Let's talk about discipline for a moment. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. Athletes train when they're tired. Musicians practice when they're uninspired. And students study when they'd rather be relaxing. Why? Because they know the long-term rewards outweigh the temporary discomfort. The same is true for prayer. The more you discipline yourself to pray, the more it becomes a natural part of your life. Over time, what starts as a discipline becomes a delight. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." But that delight often begins with a choice, not a feeling. Another critical reason to force prayer is the ripple effect it has on your life and the lives of those around you. Prayer isn't just about you, it's about interceding for others, seeking God's will for your community, and standing in the gap for a hurting world. In Ezekiel 22:30, God says, "I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, but I found no one." Your prayers matter even when they feel weak or ineffective. God can take your mustard seed of faith and move mountains. Finally, let's consider the intimacy that grows from persistent prayer. Relationships require effort, and our relationship with God is no different. Imagine if you only spoke to your spouse or best friend when you felt like it. The relationship would quickly deteriorate. In the same way, forcing yourself to pray, even when it's hard, fosters a deeper connection with God. James 4:8 promises, "Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you." Every prayer, no matter how small or forced, is a step closer to Him. So what can you do when prayer feels like a struggle? Start small. Begin with a simple, "God help me," or "Lord, I need you." Use scripture as a guide, praying verses like Psalm 23 or the Lord's Prayer. Set aside a specific time each day for prayer and stick to it, even when you don't feel like it. Surround yourself with fellow believers who can encourage you and hold you accountable. And most importantly, remember that God honors your efforts. He sees your heart and delights in your desire to seek Him, even when it's hard. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this encouragement. Prayer is one of the most powerful tools God has given us. It's a privilege, a weapon, and a lifeline. Don't let your feelings dictate your faithfulness. Push through, press in, and trust that God is working, even when you can't see it. Thank you for watching. If this message has inspired you or resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences with prayer in the comments below, and let's encourage one another. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more faith-filled content, and share this message with someone who might need it. Together we can strengthen our faith and draw closer to the God who hears every prayer.